All right, let's do a few more examples. On number one, I have a trinomial. The very first thing you want to do is see if there's any common factors that you can pull out. Okay, there's nothing you can divide evenly into 3, 11, and 10, so there's no greatest common factor. I will have to use the x method since my leading coefficient is another number besides 1. Okay, so when we do the x method, we take our a and c and plug it in up top. So 3 times 10 is 30. And then we take our b, which is negative 11. So be careful there. If you see a minus sign in front of your term, it means that that coefficient is negative. Now we need two numbers that multiply together to give me 30 and add together to give me negative 11. So since they're adding together to give me a negative number and they're multiplying together to give me a positive number, I know that my integers will both have to be negative, right? Because a negative times a negative gives you a positive, okay? And then since we're adding together to be negative, I know that I at least have to have one, if not both of them. So I believe negative 6 and negative 5 will satisfy my two requirements. Okay. So after we're done there, our third step is to divide my sides by a. My a is 3, okay? Remember, this is where your a is, the very beginning coefficient. And now we need to simplify our fractions. So we're left with negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. Negative 5/3 is still just negative 5/3. Okay, you can't simplify that. So these are my two numbers that I'm going to use to build my binomials. So we're ready to factor. I have a trinomial, so my trinomial is going to factor into two binomials. Okay, where this first guy, the negative 2, since it's a whole number, I'm just going to start with the x minus 2. And then here, since we have a fraction, okay, I'm going to have 3x negative 5 minus 5, right? Negative 5 is minus 5. All right, and then we're done. Okay, so not too bad. I'm going to let you guys do number 2 and number 3. I'm going to work out number 4. Okay, so I have a trinomial where the leading coefficient is not 1. Okay, also I can't factor anything out, right? There's nothing that can divide into 10, negative 1, and negative 2. So I'm going to have to use my x method. Oops. Use my x method. So the top we fill in with a times c. 10 times negative 2 is negative 20. And then the bottom with b. Now be careful. I just see negative p. So what is the coefficient in front of the p? Negative 1. Okay, that's some of the trickiest things to make sure that you kind of understand. When you don't see a coefficient, what does it mean? It means that that coefficient is 1. So we need two numbers that multiply together to give me 20 and add together to give me negative 1. Okay, I'm thinking that negative 5 and positive 4 meet both of those requirements. Negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. Negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. So I've got my numbers. I'm now ready to, oops, that was a negative 1. Sorry, I'm trying to clean up. Okay, so now we divide by a, which is 10. And we simplify. So what are we going to have? Well, negative 5 divided by 10 is the same thing as saying negative 1/2. You can divide a 5 into both of them. Here you can divide a 2 into both the top and the bottom, so I'll simplify to 2/5. So these are my two numbers. So now I'm ready to factor. My trinomial will factor into two binomials. Okay, I always know it'll factor into two binomials. I'm going to start with the denominator, 2p minus 1. And then over here, we'll have 5p plus 2. Okay, and if you're uncertain about your answer, simplify or check it by simplifying. You'll distribute and combine your like terms. Okay, let's see. Clear this away. And I'm going to go ahead and do number 5. Okay, so in number 5, I have a trinomial, okay, where I cannot factor anything evenly out of all 3 of the terms. So I'm going to have to use the X method, okay, because this is not 1, okay? If it was a 1, you could use the shortcut method that we learned last section, or on our last lesson. Okay, so what do we put on top? Well, we multiply the A and the C. 4 times 1 is 4. Okay, and then at the bottom, we put -4. Okay, so I need 2 numbers that multiply together to give me +4 and add together to give me -4. -2 times -2 is a +4. And -2 plus -2 is -4. So those are my 2 numbers. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide by A. What's my A again? It's right there, okay? Okay, so now we simplify. They both simplify to -1/2. So what are my 2 binomials? So we'll have 2A minus 1 times 2A minus 1. Okay, so that is my answer. Now I do want to show you guys that there is another way that I can express 2A minus 1 times 2A minus 1 as a factored form. And it's just doing this, 2A minus 1. Since I'm multiplying 2A minus 1 by itself twice, I could write it as in an exponential form, which is equally as effective here. So just be aware that you could see something like this expressed this way, okay? And why is it? Because an exponent represents repeated multiplication, and that's all this is 2A minus 1 times 2A minus 1.